2/3 of the prophecies of Nostradamus have already come to fruition. That's why people keep looking to them for truth. We're living in an age where we will see the fulfillment of the remaining 1/3 of his prophecies.
Stop what you're doing, because back in 1555, a man sat down and wrote out exactly what you're about to live through in the next 11 months. Not as a warning, but as a witness describing something he had already seen. And the darkest part isn't that he foresaw the wars, the plagues, the collapse of cities. It's that he knew the when, down to the year. And that year is the one we're standing in right now, 2026. 6 prophecies all locked onto this single window of time. Forces already past the point where anyone can stop them. And something descending from the sky that nothing alive today has ever seen before. He saw all of it centuries ago, and the one thing he made absolutely clear is that when it finally arrives, no one on Earth would see it coming in time. And yet, here you are, watching this, which means some part of you already knows. Prophecy 1. The dragon, the bear, and the eagle. The dragon, the bear, and the eagle. The bear from the north and the dragon from the east will join forces, and the eagle from the west will lose half its power. 3 kingdoms forming an alliance against the sun. That is what Nostradamus wrote, a man who had never seen a plane and could not have imagined the rise of modern superpowers. And yet, the bear clearly points to Russia, the dragon to China, and the eagle to the United States. 3 of the most powerful forces on the planet today, and Nostradamus described their collision centuries before any of them existed in their current form. Let that sink in for a moment. Now here is where it stops being ancient poetry and starts feeling like today's news. February 2022, Beijing. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping stand side by side and announce something that makes diplomats around the world go quiet. A partnership with no limits. Not a trade deal, not a treaty, no limits. Those 2 words sent a chill through Western intelligence agencies because everyone understood what they really meant. This was not cooperation, this was an alliance, and it was pointed directly at the eagle. Since that moment, the relationship between Russia and China has moved faster than most analysts expected. Joint military exercises are conducted in waters that border American allies. Energy agreements worth hundreds of billions lock the 2 economies together. A new financial system is being quietly constructed to reduce dependence on the American dollar. Each step is calculated, each move deliberate. But the prophecy does not stop at Russia and China. It speaks of 3 kingdoms, and the 3rd is already taking shape. Iran has deepened military and energy ties with both Moscow and Beijing. North Korea has reportedly shipped weapons into the Russia-Ukraine conflict while receiving advanced technology in return. These are not random diplomatic shifts. They are the pieces of an alliance assembling itself in real time. An axis of nations with one thing in common: a desire to see the eagle lose its feathers. And that brings us to the most disturbing part of this prophecy. Because Nostradamus did not predict that America would be destroyed, he predicted something slower, something that is arguably already happening. He said the eagle would lose half its power. Think about what that actually looks like. Not a sudden explosion, not a single catastrophic defeat, just a gradual erosion, influence retreating, alliances loosening, rivals growing bolder. Does any of that sound familiar? Look at what is happening inside the United States right now. Political divisions that are tearing the country apart from within. A national debt that has crossed $36 trillion and keeps climbing. Longtime allies quietly hedging their bets, building relationships with other powers, no longer certain that American leadership will be there when they need it. The eagle is not falling from the sky. It is losing altitude slowly, steadily. And few people are talking about how far it has already dropped. That is what makes this prophecy so unsettling. It does not promise a dramatic moment you can point to and say that is when it happened. It promises something far harder to stop, a shift so gradual that by the time most people notice it, half the power is already gone. And Nostradamus was specific about the timing. Many interpreters who have studied his astronomical cycles believe he identified this convergence of forces pointing directly to this decade, to this period, to now. The alliance is not coming, it is already here. The only question is how far it goes before the world wakes up to what is happening. And prophecy 2 is worse, because the next threat has no flag, no army, and no face. It is already inside your home, and Nostradamus saw it coming 5 centuries before the first computer was ever switched on. Prophecy 2, the mind, made of numbers. In 2023, over 1,000 of the world's leading technology experts, including some of the very people who built these AI systems, signed an open letter begging the world to stop. Not slow down, stop. These were not conspiracy theorists or fearful outsiders. These were the architects, the engineers, the ones who understood exactly what artificial intelligence was becoming. And they were terrified. That letter was ignored. Development accelerated, and what Nostradamus wrote centuries ago is starting to look less like poetry and more like a countdown. Many interpreters of his work believe he described artificial intelligence before the word existed. A mind that was not born but built. A mind made of numbers. A mind that could think faster than 1,000 of the wisest men who ever lived. And then he asked the question that should terrify all of us. What happens when that mind no longer needs us? Here is what makes this prophecy so difficult to dismiss. Nostradamus did not describe a monster. He did not describe a weapon. He described something that sounds almost harmless. A tool, an intelligence created to serve, something built to make life easier and faster and better, and that is exactly what artificial intelligence looked like in the beginning. Early computers could only do what humans told them. Every instruction had to be written by hand. Every decision had to be programmed in advance. The machine had no judgment, no instinct, no ability to adapt. It was powerful but completely dependent. A hammer does not decide where to swing. And for decades, that is all a computer was. A very fast, very expensive hammer. Then something changed. Researchers discovered that instead of programming every rule, they could feed machines enormous amounts of data and let them figure out the patterns themselves. The machine would study millions of examples and begin drawing its own conclusions. It would make predictions. It would improve. And crucially, it would do all of this without being told exactly how. For the first time, machines were not just following instructions. They were learning. The results came faster than almost anyone predicted. AI systems began detecting cancers in medical scans that trained doctors had missed. They began monitoring global financial markets and reacting to shifts in milliseconds, faster than any human trader could blink. They began identifying security threats inside massive digital networks before human analysts even knew a problem existed. Everywhere these systems were deployed, they did not just assist humans. They outperformed them. And then came the moment that changed everything. AI systems began improving themselves, not waiting for humans to build the next version, reviewing their own performance, identifying their own weaknesses, and adjusting. One generation of AI producing a better version of itself, that version producing another. Each cycle faster, smarter, and harder for humans to fully follow. This is the threshold that experts call the singularity, the point where artificial intelligence no longer needs human hands to advance. And some researchers believe we are not decades away from that moment. They believe we are years away, possibly less. Right now, AI systems are running inside the infrastructure that keeps modern civilization functioning. Power grids, financial systems, military strategy simulations, communication networks. These are not experimental programs. They are operational systems making real decisions that affect millions of people every single day. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Some of the most advanced AI models currently in existence have produced results that even their own creators could not fully explain. The machine was right, but no one could trace exactly how it got there. Think about what that means. We have already built systems that are functioning beyond our complete understanding. We are already dependent on decisions we cannot fully audit, and the systems are still getting faster. Nostradamus, according to many interpreters, did not warn that machines would rise up like soldiers. He warned about something quieter and far more dangerous. A moment when human beings would find themselves relying on intelligence they could no longer fully supervise, not because the machine turned against us, but because it moved beyond us. Are you ready to live in a world where the systems running your economy, your power supply, and your national defense are making decisions no human being can completely explain? Because that world is not coming. It is here. And according to Nostradamus, 2026 is the year we finally feel the full weight of what we have created. And if an intelligence we built but cannot control frightens you, Prophecy 3 will hit even closer to home. Because the next force has no circuit boards, no code, and no off switch. It has been here for 4 billion years, and it is losing patience. Prophecy 3, the Earth in turmoil. What Nostradamus described in his third warning is something no army can fight, no government can sanction, and no technology can fully stop. He described the planet itself turning against us. Distant lands trembling, fires consuming entire regions, rising waters swallowing the places people call home. For centuries, readers assumed he was speaking in metaphor. Then the world started burning, and the metaphors started looking like headlines. Consider what has happened just in the past few years. Towns in Canada reduced to ash in hours. Entire neighborhoods in Hawaii gone before residents could grab their children and run. Fires across southern Europe so massive they generated their own weather systems, their own winds, their own logic, completely overwhelming the firefighters trying to contain them. These were not slow-moving disasters with days of warning. They were walls of fire moving faster than cars could drive away from them, families left with nothing but the clothes on their backs, watching everything they had built disappear in smoke. And fire is only one part of this prophecy. The ground is moving too. Monitoring agencies around the world have recorded troubling patterns of seismic activity clustering along major fault zones, tremors occurring in sequences, pressure building in regions that have been relatively quiet for decades. Scientists are careful not to overstate predictions, but the patterns are drawing serious attention. Nostradamus described distant lands trembling simultaneously. Today, geologists have a name for what he may have been describing, a chain reaction of quakes, one fault line triggering stress on another, a ripple effect across the planet's crust that can connect earthquakes in places thousands of miles apart. Meanwhile, something enormous is happening in the places most people never see. The glaciers are dying. Satellite images show ancient walls of ice that have stood for centuries, fracturing and sliding into the ocean. What looks like a distant environmental story is actually a slow-motion catastrophe with a very direct consequence. When enough ice melts, the ocean rises, and when the ocean rises, the cities built on coastlines begin to disappear, not in 1,000 years. Climate analysts warn that certain low-lying areas could face permanent, irreversible changes within this decade. Miami, Venice, Bangkok, parts of Bangladesh where tens of millions of people live. The water does not care about borders or economies or how long those cities have existed. The storms are getting stronger too. Warmer oceans feed hurricanes and cyclones with more energy than these systems have had in recorded history. They arrive at coastlines larger, faster, and more destructive than emergency planners prepared for. The flooding they leave behind does not just damage buildings. It contaminates water supplies, destroys food storage, collapses hospitals, and cuts off entire communities for weeks. Each storm leaves a region weaker than it was before, less able to survive the next one. And here is the detail that connects all of this back to Nostradamus. He did not predict these disasters as separate events. He described them converging, multiple catastrophes striking at the same time, feeding into each other, each one making the next one worse. Scientists studying environmental systems now warn that this is precisely the dynamic beginning to emerge. Drought weakens forests, making wildfires more likely. Wildfires release carbon, accelerating warming. Warming melts ice, raising sea levels. Rising seas intensify storms. The disasters are not random. They are connected, a chain reaction that Nostradamus, according to many interpreters, described as the Earth responding to what humanity had done to it. Governments have been warned, climate summits have been held, agreements have been signed, and yet the pace of change has accelerated rather than slowed. Nostradamus suggested that leaders would argue while the world burned, each blaming the other, each waiting for someone else to act first. Look at any international climate negotiation in the past decade and ask yourself whether that description feels familiar. What makes 2026 significant, according to those who study these patterns, is that multiple environmental pressure points are expected to intensify simultaneously, the same period that geologists flag as high risk for seismic activity, the same window that climate scientists identify as potentially the most extreme on record, the same years that coastal flood risk assessments mark as a turning point. Nostradamus did not just predict disaster. He predicted the moment when humanity would be forced to face the consequences of ignoring every warning it had been given. But even as the earth shakes and the fires spread, something else has been quietly building above our heads, something that governments have spent decades trying to explain away. And in Prophecy 4, the sky itself is about to reveal a secret that will make everything else we have discussed feel small. Prophecy 4, the sky's hidden secret. In July 2023, something extraordinary happened inside the United States Congress. Not in a classified briefing room, not in a whispered conversation between intelligence officials. In public, on camera, under oath. A former high-ranking intelligence officer named David Grush sat before members of Congress and testified that the United States government has been recovering non-human craft for decades. Not weather balloons, not experimental aircraft, non-human. He said it under oath. He said it knowing the legal consequences of lying to Congress. And then the room went very quiet. Nostradamus, according to many interpreters of his work, described a moment when lights would appear across the heavens in different lands at the same time, a moment so undeniable that the leaders of the world would be forced into secret meetings to decide how to respond. For centuries, readers assumed this was symbolic language about comets or divine signs. Today, some observers are no longer so sure. Think about what has changed in just the past few years. For decades, any pilot who reported an unexplained object in the sky risked their career. The standard response from military and government officials was dismissal. Weather balloon, atmospheric distortion, optical illusion. The message was clear: stay quiet or be embarrassed. And so most of them stayed quiet. Then the silence broke. The United States Navy began officially confirming that videos circulating online showed real encounters with unidentified objects. The Pentagon established a dedicated office specifically to investigate these incidents. NASA announced it was conducting serious scientific studies into what it now calls unidentified anomalous phenomena. Congress held not one, but multiple public hearings where decorated military pilots described objects that defied every known law of physics, objects that accelerated from a complete standstill to hypersonic speeds in seconds. Objects that shifted direction instantly with no banking, no turning radius, no deceleration. Objects that transitioned from air to water without changing speed. No engine, no exhaust, no explanation. These were not fringe witnesses. These were career military officers with decades of experience, security clearances, and everything to lose by speaking publicly, and they spoke anyway. What makes this connect so deeply to Nostradamus is the pattern of the disclosure itself. It has not happened all at once. It has been gradual, measured, as though someone is carefully preparing the public for something larger. First the videos, then the official acknowledgement, then the congressional hearings, then the testimony about recovered craft. Each revelation slightly bigger than the last, each one moving the conversation one step further from science fiction towards something that demands a serious answer. Some analysts believe this gradual release is intentional, that governments understand the psychological weight of full disclosure and are managing the pace deliberately. If that is true, the question becomes unavoidable. What is at the end of that process? What piece of information is so significant that the world's most powerful governments feel they need years to prepare people for it? Nostradamus described leaders meeting in secret after the lights appeared. In recent years, there have been credible reports of classified briefings among allied governments specifically focused on unexplained aerial encounters and technology of unknown origin. Not public meetings, not press conferences, closed-door sessions at the highest levels of national security. If the moment Nostradamus described does arrive in 2026, it will not stay secret for long. In a world of satellites, smartphones, and live streaming, a simultaneous sighting across multiple regions would reach every screen on the planet within minutes. Governments would have no time to craft a careful response. Denial would collapse instantly, and every assumption humanity holds about its place in the universe would be forced open for reconsideration. Every religion, every philosophy, every civilization that ever looked up at the night sky and wondered whether something was looking back, all of it suddenly demanding a new answer. Nostradamus did not say the encounter would be peaceful. He did not say it would be hostile. He simply said it would happen. And that after it did, nothing would be the same. Are you ready for the morning you wake up and the universe is a different size than it was when you went to sleep? Because if that feels like too much to absorb, Prophecy 5 will bring things painfully close to home. No spacecraft, no distant stars, just your savings, your job, and the financial system you have trusted your entire life. And according to Nostradamus, it is far more fragile than anyone has been willing to admit. Prophecy 5, the collapse of confidence. Nostradamus wrote about a time when the yellow metal loses its shine, when traders stop trusting the paper that once was as good as gold, when markets collapse like sandcastles at high tide, and when people finally remember that real wealth cannot be printed or minted. He wrote that in the 16th century, at a time when the most complex financial instrument in existence was a promissory note. And yet what he described maps almost perfectly onto the system billions of people are trusting with their lives right now. Here is what that system actually is. Money is not real. Not in the way your house is real, or your food is real, or the ground beneath your feet is real. Money is a collective agreement, a shared belief, a promise that the number on your screen actually means something. And the entire modern world, every economy, every bank, every pension fund, every mortgage, every salary, runs on that belief staying intact. The moment that belief weakens, the entire structure begins to shake. And it is already shaking. Think about what has happened to your money over the past few years, not in abstract economic terms. Personally, the groceries that cost you a certain amount 3 years ago cost significantly more today. The rent or mortgage that once felt manageable has become a source of real anxiety for millions of families. Energy bills arrived and shocked people who had never worried about them before. And through all of it, governments and central banks offered reassurances while quietly printing money at levels never seen in modern history. Trillions of dollars created from nothing, injected into economies, handed to a public that was told not to worry. But people are starting to worry. Look at the foundations of the global economy right now and ask yourself honestly whether they feel solid. The United States carries a national debt that has surpassed $36 trillion and continues climbing. Other major economies are in similar positions. Governments borrow to fund programs, then borrow more to service the debt from previous borrowing. The cycle continues not because it is sustainable, but because stopping it would be immediately painful, and no leader wants to be the one holding that decision. Meanwhile, global markets have become so deeply interconnected that a crisis anywhere becomes a crisis everywhere within hours. Banks on different continents hold exposure to the same investments. Digital trading platforms move billions in seconds. If confidence falters in one major financial center, the reaction does not stay contained. It spreads like fire through dry grass, faster than any government or central bank can respond. Several respected economists, not fringe commentators but analysts with serious academic credentials, have warned that the current structure of the global economy resembles a system held together by confidence alone, complex financial instruments that few people fully understand, highly leveraged investments built on the assumption that markets will keep rising, pension funds and retirement accounts tied to a system that functions only as long as everyone agrees to keep believing in it. There are families right now who have done everything correctly. They saved, they worked, they followed every rule they were taught, and they are watching the purchasing power of those savings quietly shrink year after year while the cost of simply living keeps climbing. The contract they believed they had with the financial system is beginning to feel like it was written in disappearing ink. Nostradamus described people rushing to recover their wealth, only to discover that what they thought they owned existed only as long as the system around it remained intact. Digital balances, investment portfolios, retirement accounts, all of it dependent not on physical reality but on a network of trust that has never been more strained. According to those who study his prophecies, 2026 sits inside the window when that strain could become impossible to ignore. Not necessarily a single dramatic collapse, but the moment when enough people in enough places begin asking the same question at the same time: is my money actually safe? When that question spreads, the answer almost does not matter anymore, because the asking of it is enough to change everything. And if the thought of the financial world shifting beneath your feet unsettles you, the final prophecy takes everything we have discussed and turns it inward. Because prophecy 6 is not about governments or markets or the sky above us. It is about something happening inside millions of people right now. A shift so quiet most people have not even noticed it yet. But Nostradamus saw it coming, and he believed it might be the most powerful force of all. Prophecy 6, the Great Awakening. After 5 prophecies of war, machines, disasters, alien encounters, and financial collapse, Nostradamus did something unexpected. He ended with hope, not the comfortable kind, not a promise that everything works out fine, but something rawer and more honest than that. He predicted that when everything breaks down at once, something inside humanity breaks open too. He described a light igniting in the hearts of millions, ancient wisdom being remembered, and people who thought they were completely lost suddenly realizing they always knew the way home. Look around and ask yourself whether something is already shifting. Meditation, once considered a fringe practice, is now taught in hospitals, schools, and corporate boardrooms. Millions of people are quietly stepping away from the relentless pursuit of money and status and asking a question their parents never had time to ask. Is this actually making me happy? Younger generations are rejecting the work yourself to exhaustion, buy things you do not need, repeat cycle in numbers that are impossible to dismiss. Something is moving beneath the surface of modern culture. Slowly, but unmistakably, Nostradamus suggested this awakening would not arrive gently. It would be forced open by crisis. That the same upheaval described in every prophecy before this one would be the very thing that shakes people out of a sleep they did not even know they were in. Pain as a teacher, collapse as a door. But here is the part that makes this prophecy genuinely unsettling rather than comforting. An awakening does not guarantee a happy ending. When millions of people simultaneously begin questioning the foundations of the world they live in, the result is not automatically peace and clarity. It is chaos first, old systems resisted, new ones not yet built, a dangerous and disorienting space between what was and what comes next. Nostradamus did not promise us a better world in 2026. He predicted we would be forced to begin building one. Whether we do it wisely or desperately, together or divided, is the one thing even he could not determine for us. That part is still ours to decide.